Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, thanks for coming for class. It's nice to have an audience. Such a big audience, too. This is the biggest audience I've even class to here. And I see so many devotees on Zoom. So hopefully I can say something pleasing to all of you and hopefully nothing too unpleasing. So this is a really nice verse. All the verses, as we always say in Bhagavatam, are very nice. Um, and I thought to highlight in this translation and purport, Srila Prabhupada speaking about, he's highlighting the nice qualities of Ajamil that he has in his youth, as we are, hearing in the earlier verses of this canto and this chapter. All of the things Ajamil does in the later part of his life. So his activities after he's fallen down from his nice brahmachari lifestyle. And here we're hearing his nice qualities as a youth. And there's this really nice lecture by His Holiness Devi Swami on this pastime, but on these qualities, where he's reading them and he's saying, this is, how we can hear these nice qualities of Ajamal. He was, a perfect brahmana, perfect brahmachari. He was very clean, was very soft-hearted, was very well educated in the verses, very respectful to senior devotees, has all these really nice qualities, and then somehow he still managed to fall down. So what to speak of us? I can think for myself, like I definitely don't have even a smithering of these qualities, let alone. So what is the chances of actually making it in bhakti? But he highlights this nice point, that we'll talk about later about how being a brahmana doesn't necessarily make you a Vaishnava, but a Vaishnava is automatically a brahmana just by their practicing Krishna consciousness. They develop those qualities as well. So here's I thought to talk about our position in Krishna, our position in this material world is unsafe. We're actually in an unsafe position unless we take full shelter of Krishna. And going off these classes that we were hearing yesterday and the day before, to talk a little bit, just kind of carry the same flow of, uh, what the real shelter is that we have in our lives. So I was listening to a class on this verse last night, and by Jai Jagannath Prabhu, and he was kind of reading this verse and explaining it in a really interesting way that I thought it was nice for me to think about in just in a day-to-day setting, but also in relationship to this pastime of Ajamil. He was saying how one devotee had come to him and he was quite distressed, and he was talking about a senior member of ISKCON and how he had done some things that were not in line with the scriptures. And he was thinking, oh, he's such a pure devotee. How could he do this? And Jai Jagannath Prabhu was saying, oh, can you see consciousness? And the devotee is like, no, of course I can't see consciousness. I said, okay, well, if you can't see Krishna consciousness, then how can we even see Krishna consciousness? So you can, basically the point he was making is by looking at someone's activities and what they're doing, it's hard to actually see what's going on in their heart, what's going on with their consciousness, what's going on with their internal desire and their mood. So saying that, not justifying anyone's activities that have, done good or bad things in Krishna consciousness, but and not getting into the politics of that, but just on this level of pastime, and also just seeing within ourselves and within other devotees is, I thought it was very nice to meditate on, like, someone might be doing something that in our eyes is like, oh, that's not very good. But where's their heart? Where's their heart at? What's their internal desire and their mood? Uh, we can't see that, but Krishna can see that because he's Paramatma. He's sitting in the heart of all living entities. Um, and there's this nice example I was thinking of as well, like in relationship to this, where, um, at least for myself, I remember having this conception when I was living in this ashram, uh, that my perception of what like a great or elevated devotee was based on like some sort of like qualities they have. Like, oh, this devotee, she gets up at 4 every single day and she chants all of her rounds in a row. So she's like a weaker devotee. She could go to bed at midnight and she'd still get up at 4. So in my mind, I was like, that is like, that's a highly qualified devotee. Um, and then yeah, but then over time, or this person, she has khichdi every single day, so she's super austere. So her level of austerity in my mind is like a qualification for how senior she is or how her level of Krishna consciousness. Um, but actually, yeah, these external qualities, of course, they're really nice to develop and to strive for, but they shouldn't be taken as a determinating factor for someone's position in Krishna consciousness. And yeah, I remember His Holiness Devi Swami was giving an example about this. He was describing one of his god sisters. Her service was to edit the footnotes in Srila Prabhupada's books. And the footnotes are like when you're reading and there's a little asterisk and then you follow it all the way down and there's like a little comment. And he's saying like, like who even notices this service? It's like you just read it, you don't even like fast check, keep going. And it seems like such an insignificant service. Of course, no services are insignificant in Krishna's vision. But he was describing how when she got a little sick and she was leaving her body, and she was somewhere in America, I don't know where, I can't remember, but she was there and she was present with a lot of like big sannyasi god brothers. So like he was present and there was some other like big names that were there as well. And as she was leaving her body, they were doing kirtan. And then he's describing how um, as she was leaving, she was saying, "Oh, I wish you guys could like, you wish you guys could see this. I wish you guys could see what I'm seeing." Like, he was describing like basically she was seeing like Vrindavan. She was going back to the spiritual planet, to the spiritual world to be with Krishna. And he was thinking like, "Wow, this is really amazing. Like, here's this person who is doing like a simple service, but doing it with so much sincerity and like so much love for Krishna that, yeah, Krishna at the end of life gives the desired result." I can try and find that lecture so I can maybe share it in a more uh, precise way. It was a couple of years ago that he said that in a class. Um, so yeah, anyways, I just wanted to share that. I was listening to the lecture and it was just a nice realization that I had then to remind myself that, oh yeah, we see devotees practicing to different standards, or they're practicing and they have different qualities, but actually their internal mood is something that we can't see. Um, and yeah, that's what really matters. That's what's the most important thing. And here we're hearing of all these nice qualities that Ajamil has, and then still somehow he managed to like slip. And of course, the pastime, you've heard it many times, even in these classes, that um, he's very mode of goodness. He's living a very mode of goodness lifestyle. And then he comes in contact with the mode of passion, basically. Mode of passion personified, this incident with this prostitute and this low class man. Um, and he becomes totally bewildered. And then, although he tries to control his mind using his shastric knowledge and his celibate principles, his mind is instantly the mode of passion comes in and starts spinning and spinning. Um, and yeah, he falls down, right? Mode of passion, he becomes totally bewildered. As we hear this, mode of passion is like fire, it burns. It's actually there's this really nice verse I wanted to read from Bhagavad Gita. I'm sure all of you know it by heart, but just for my benefit, read it. Um, so yeah, it's in 337. Prabhupada's saying, and the translation, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "It is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion, and later transformed into wrath, and which is the old devouring sinful enemy of this world." And then some points that Prabhupada says in the purport that really stuck out is, "Then again, when lust is unsatisfied, it turns into wrath. Wrath is transformed into illusion, and illusion continues the material existence. Therefore, lust is the greatest enemy of the living entity, and it is lust only which induces the pure living entity to remain entangled in the material world. This is quite interesting, and there's a verse after this that this one, which is 340, and in the purport, Srila Prabhupada's explaining like exactly how it happens. There's like three phases. This translation is, the senses, the mind, and the intelligence are the sitting places of this lust. Through them, lust covers the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. And then he says in the purport, the mind gradually becomes a reservoir of ideas of sense gratification, and as a result, the mind and the senses become the repositories of lust. That's like the first thing that happens. The mind becomes like, starts thinking, I can enjoy like this. Like we can see in this pastime of Ajna, he sees this lusty woman and he's like, oh, maybe I could enjoy like that. Then number two, lusty intelligence influences the spirit soul to acquire the false ego and identify itself with matter. So this is like the process of living entity taking birth, but it can also be applied to our daily life. So then the lusty intelligence is like, yeah, you should take her into your house. That's a really good idea. And although the spiritual intelligence is there, it's like that picture in Bhagavad Gita with the horses, the chariot, the driver, and the soul in the back. When we lose control of our intelligence, then we take the spirit soul takes the back seat, and the mind takes the front seat and starts to direct everything. So and then the third one, the spirit soul becomes addicted to enjoying the material senses and makes mistakes and mistakes this true happiness. So yeah, after he's taken this prostitute into his house, then he starts to enjoy her and enjoy the results of what happens when you engage in this sort of activities with a prostitute. And yeah, produces all these kids, and this becomes his happiness, this becomes his life. So we can see this example in Bhagavatam, and we can see it so many times in our material engagements in the material world. And even I can see it myself, like so many instances where the mind's like, I don't want to take shelter of Krishna, and then goes and does something ridiculous. So yeah, the mind, if it's not, if even if it's trained in Krishna consciousness, it's so powerful. It's considered. It can either be the best friend or the enemy, as we hear in Bhagavad Gita. And when it's the enemy, it's definitely not a devotee. And it can lead us very far astray from our actual desired goal. And have so much experience of this from how the mind definitely doesn't want to take shelter of Krishna if it's not being trained properly. Um, I remember I was on one book marathon a while ago, and I was traveling with one devotee, and I was getting so purified on the street, like just nothing going out. It was like small town, like super hot outside, just and the mind was like, I don't want to do this. Like I really don't want to do this. And I remember thinking, okay, just stand on the street for another 5 minutes and then we can go into like that shop. And my mind's like, yeah, that shop, that's gonna bring you some satisfaction. So I remember like, okay, and then you go into the shop and you're looking around, you're like, man, there's nothing in here. Like this is just lame. And then, the next town we go to, the same thing happens, and there's the same shop because in New Zealand, there's just these small towns, and there's like, you're traveling up, and there's just like 10 of them, and they're all pretty much exactly the same. There's like going to be a giant, um, what is it? There's going to be a gambling center, there's going to be a liquor store, there's going to be a fish and chip shop, there's going to be, um, what? A warehouse, if you're lucky, a warehouse. Or one of those giant Samoan department stores that has like all the things. So I remember going to these towns and being like, oh, it's in this exact same shop as the last town. Maybe this shop will be the one my mind finds some satisfaction in. And just experiencing this, like, wow, the mind doesn't want to take shelter of Krishna. Like, my mind definitely doesn't want to take shelter of Krishna. And it'll try to take shelter of everything else. And then it'll wind up feeling like, oh, man, just nothing's satisfying. And then when we turn to Srila Prabhupada's books, it's like, hey, that's what I was looking for the entire time. Unfortunately for myself, it takes like maybe a couple hours or maybe a couple of days before I come to that realization, like, oh, just need to read, and then everything becomes makes sense. Um, so it's this. I've heard in this lecture that it's this lust that we hear in Bhagavad Gita and we hear from Srila Prabhupada's books, that yeah, this lust is what's driving the living entity on. And I've heard it's described as like a feel good feeling. Like that's what we're chasing. Like, oh, that felt good. I'll just do that again. That's what I'm looking for. Like that was a nice feeling. I'll just do that feeling again and that and that. And we can't see that it's actually detrimental to us. And yeah, and it's actually causing us suffering. But in the moment, it feels really good. Like I was thinking, this happened to me yesterday. Um, I'm trying not to eat sugar because I know it's really bad for me. But yesterday I was like, I just need something sweet. So I had a bunch of this apple crumble that Ken makes that's gluten-free, full of sugar, but really nice. And then I was like, yeah, everything's great. And then like within an hour, I felt so sick. And I was like, oh, why did I do that? But it just been fruit and it would have been just as satisfying. So yeah, I can just see it's this feel good feeling like, yeah, I want to do this because it feels good right now. And I don't even care about the results. I just want to do it because it's instant gratification. Um, and like the pinnacle of this for the material world is like illicit sex. This is like what everyone's chasing. Just wanting this feeling, this feeling, this feeling. It actually makes the entire world like turn, basically. Um, And I was just, yeah, seeing this even yesterday, like even small things like advertisements. I was on my computer doing some work and this advertisement popped up for like this hair care product from Sephora. And the way that the marketing was like delegated was like, yeah, you should get this because it'll enhance your beauty so much so that anyone will be attracted to you. And I just thought, I was like, wow, this is so interesting. Like the basis of this is just sex gratification. Um, yeah, which is what people are always trying to get to. Not realizing that the results of this is just like, detrimental for your health and your body, or you lose your memory. Like, there's so many negative side effects of this that people don't know about or they're not taking the time to understand until they're older when they're like, oh yeah, like, my memory is like shot or your health has declined dramatically. Um, so yeah, this mode of passion, it burns like fire and it can be all consuming. Um, And this path of Ajamil is a really good reminder of that, seeing how, the modes of nature are always present. They're fluctuating, they're moving around. And there's so many different combinations of them, like red, yellow, blue. If you combine them all together, then you get this color and you get that color. And then, yeah, it can just multiply, 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 multiply for unlimited combinations of suffering. So yeah, we're hearing how Ajmal is practicing this mode of goodness lifestyle. He was adhering to all the principles of mode of goodness, and he was a very nice brahmachari. He was taking shelter of his guru and his the sun god Agni Dev, and still he managed to get swept away. So how is this? Mhm. We'll hear about it in later texts, about all of this, but we've heard it many times in this lecture that although he had this mode of goodness lifestyle, he wasn't necessarily practicing Krishna bhakti, devotional service to Krishna. Um, so it took him, it took longer for him to come back. And but that whatever service he did, because although he's practicing a Brahminical lifestyle, and he was worshiping Narayan, there was Narayana Shila in every Brahmana's house at that time. So he did some devotional service, even that little bit, so much so that at the end of his life, Krishna was like, okay, like, I'll inspire you to name your son Narayan so that you're calling out to me unknowingly. So this is an example of how Krishna always protects his devotees. Um, but even if we've done a little bit of service, or maybe we've even just chanted Hare Krishna once, then we can remember, oh, that time I chanted, I was really chanting. Um, then yeah, Krishna, he takes note. It's not like it goes in vain. Um, and we hear that even if one makes a little advancement on this path of devotional service, Krishna always remembers. It's like we have a bhakti bank account and we are putting things in, and Krishna's keeping track, like, oh, okay, I see you've got this much, I see you've got this much. Um, Even so much to the point that if we, in this lifetime, maybe we don't make it, we drop our practice. Then in the next lifetime, we come in and we have the same bank account balance still. So Krishna brings us right back up to where we are. And I've seen this many times when devotees, like, people we meet on book distribution, or they come to a preaching center, they come to a temple, and it's just like right away within like, maybe 2 weeks, they're like fully practicing Krishna consciousness. And we can be like, wow, like this person just like so quickly came. And you can see, yeah, maybe in the person's previous life, they were also practicing. That's how they're easy to just take it up so quickly. And there's this one. I mean, there's examples of um, Ajmil in real life and so many different examples. But I was thinking there's this, I was telling one devotee, I was telling Parijata the other day about this one devotee um, that I know. And how he used to be he was a staunch brahmachari for a long time and then got married um, and they kind of slipped away from the bhakti practice for a bit. Um, and then yeah, and they were kind of coming, but always respectful to the towards the devotees, but never, but they weren't fully practicing the practice. Um, and then and then he slipped away further, and even to the point of like eating meat and all these sorts of things, but always maintained like respect and appreciation for the devotees. Um, and even for many years, I think. Um, and then and then he made a full comeback, and it was so ecstatic. This devotee like fully came back to Krishna consciousness. Um, and it's yes, um, would give these like really amazing Bhagavatam classes. Um, and you could see with like full realization that he had experienced so much suffering. And I remember when he was hearing one of his Bhagavatam classes and he um, first made his comeback. And started chanting 16 rounds again and practicing a Brahminical lifestyle. It's very like enlivening to see. And he was speaking about the uh, the importance of chanting Hare Krishna and how there's like nothing else worth taking shelter of. And it was really amazing to see. He was speaking with so much like realization of someone who had, practiced before and then dropped his practice, went like right off into Maya, and then came back from that, which is not easy to do. You can imagine if you leave and then you come back, it would be quite like hard on the ego to come back to a place like to come back and start again. Um, and he was giving a Bhagavatam class explaining like the importance of chanting Hare Krishna. And he was saying with such conviction, like there's nothing else that'll give you as much like shelter as chanting Hare Krishna. To the point when he started like his eyes started watering and he's like, the world is just full of suffering. And he works in quite an intense job. So he was, sharing some realizations from that. It was just very potent to hear it from that perspective. Like, there's nothing worth taking shelter of. Because we hear it so many times, but for myself, I can think like, oh, maybe there's like something out there still, like, you know, um, like I could try that, I could try that, even though there's not, and intelligently we know there's not, but the mind's like, what about if you go to the beach and it's summertime and you're eating ice cream on the beach and it's summer and you're in some place that's really warm? Then the mind's like, yeah, there might be some sense gratification there. And then, someone comes in and is like, sand bugs, or like, America, there's like a million people on the beach, so you'll be uncomfortable. So there's the suffering, but it's sometimes it can be harder to see. So I just remember from this class this Prabhu gave that, he just had so much conviction in it, which was, really encouraging for myself to be able to you hear that from somebody um, who had experienced going back to the mature world. and experience that suffering to like a max degree, and then coming back to Krishna and being like, yeah, this is the only thing worth engaging in. Um, so yeah, I just wanted to share that and how that means like how we can secure our real position in bhakti, um, and get free from that fear, which is the fear of falling back into an animal form of life, falling back into the cycle of birth and death, repeated birth and death, and like losing the chance to take up Krishna consciousness is yeah, really I think it just boils down to our chanting, um, and yeah, constantly thinking like, how can we chant attentively? How can my japa take priority in my life? I was listening to a class recently by Swami Swami, and he was saying that your main career should be how can I chant attentively? That should be our real focus. Like, how can my japa take priority in my life? Which is something that I'm really trying to think about right now. How can my japa be like, how can I plan my day in such a way that my japa have quality time with Krishna? And even the other day, we were in a meeting and Parijata was giving her, we were all saying different things about, um, you know, what we found is working for us, what realizations we've had that are working for us to increase our service or that are helping us in our service. And yeah, Parijata was saying that for her, it's like having quality time with Krishna, 2 hours where she chants her rounds, and that just can carry her through her service and actually like increase her service, which we all know, but definitely noticed recently my rounds have not been like as solid chunks as they used to be. I can see like my services, my mood towards service is not the same as it was before. So yeah, this increased intensity of trying to hear and chant attentively can actually save us from slipping in bhakti. There's this nice lecture by Naranjana Swami where he's talking about a struggling sadhaka and how it's actually a very glorious position to be struggling for Krishna, um, because the struggle is what keeps us here. Otherwise, we can struggle for so many things in the material world. Um, I could write an entire series of books of all the things I've struggled for in material energy. Um, but struggling for Krishna is actually very glorious because it's a constant endeavor to try and increase our attachment to Krishna. And then, of course, if we're working a full-time job or we have a family or um, we're doing full-time service, there's always transcendental anxiety that will be in trying to fit everything in. And that's where the struggle comes, like struggling to do everything. Even being on a roster, like in Wellington, we had a roster that was so nicely organized that literally all you had to do was just show up and do your services, and everything was just so nicely arranged for you. You didn't even really have to think about what you were doing. It's just like slotted here, slotted there, and then you had time to read, and then, all you had to do was just figure out what you were going to eat. Even that was already prepared for you, so you just showed up and did it. But even in that situation, I remember struggling so much. Like, oh, this is so hard. How am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? Because they make it so complicated. But yeah, this struggle for Krishna is actually very glorious, and it keeps us here because we helps us to give us something to focus on. So I guess I'll just finish there because it's 7:48. Got about 12 minutes before the altar is supposed to open. Um, oh yeah, actually, I wanted to share this one point because it's really nice. I heard in a lecture, and it really helped me in my chanting. We often hear this point of how we should chant. Even Thakur was saying yesterday um, that we should chant as though the child's calling out for his mother. So I always had a trouble understanding this point. And maybe we were even asking what someone was talking about this and Darshan like, but how like because how does a child call out for his mother? Like, am I supposed to be screaming in my japa? It's a group setting. I know I'll disturb the devotees if I start doing that. Um, like, how does that work? And then I heard it in a lecture by, uh, I think it was also by Narendra Maharaj, or no, actually it was by Indra Swami Prabhu, and he was saying, that the mood of a child crawling out for his mother is like, um, he was giving an example. He's like, yeah, when he was a kid, he's like, yeah, I'd play with my friends, and then something happened, like I fell over and I hurt myself. The first person I'd think of is my mom. And then, I'd be like, mom, mom, like, and in that word, mom, there's like, I'm fully dependent on you. Like, I need your help. I need you to tell me that it's okay. I need care from you. I need love from you. Like, all of this is encompassed in this word, mom. Um, or, you go home, like, um, yeah, like I remember when I was a kid, um, and I can remember like distinctly calling out in like complete anxiety. I was like in the middle of Moab on a family holiday. My dad was there, his wife was there. Um, and then there was like a bunch of other like random people, including this woman who I literally swear, I'm pretty sure her name was like Rainbow Starfish. She was like super hippie to the max. And she was like, we're gonna go see the praying rocks. Do you want to come? And I was like 14, so I was like, yeah, praying rock sounds cool. Let's go. So she took me on this like trail, led me through this little river, and then it was like took a couple hours to get there, or an hour or so, and I was pretty tired. So she's like, we found this little island in the middle of this like little stream that was like in the middle of a canyon. And she's like, the praying rocks are just around the corner. Do you want to stay here or do you want to come? And I was like, oh, I guess I'll just stay here if they're just around the corner. So I just sat there on this little like sand island. And then it was in the middle of the sun, and of course I'm Kapha as, so I fell asleep. Um, and then I woke up like sometime later and she wasn't there. And so I was waiting for like an hour, like 2 hours. And then she wasn't there. So I started panicking and I was like, oh my God, I don't know where to go. I don't know where to go. So I started like, calling like, someone help, 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 mom, mom, anyone, please. And no one came. And then the sun started to set and I started to hear the coyotes and I really started panicking, but I didn't know what to do. And I was like calling out like anything for help. And I remember like in this mood of like calling out, you're just like totally just like there's no um you have no other shelter. She's calling and like trying to comfort yourself in some way. Unfortunately, I didn't know the Maha Mantra at that time, otherwise I'm sure I wouldn't have been in as much anxiety as I was. But yeah, in this word mom, there's like your mom provides the love and the shelter and the care. So when you're calling out for like, please, like, I have nothing else. Like you are my shelter. And that, anyways, that just helped me understand the mood of like chanting as though we're calling out for the mother is like the mood of a child who's like hurt himself and he's like, Mom, Mom. Like, that mood that's there, that relationship is like the mood to have when chanting. So that was just really helpful for me, that class. What are you saying there? Oh gosh, yeah, this is back. So yeah, that I was in this little pod and then um yeah, I had a meltdown obviously because I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna die here. The coyotes started howling and it was getting dark. And then I kind of like walked in the river and I was like, maybe I'll go this way. I'll try and find my way back. And then, Daisy Starfish, Star Child, came around the corner and she's like just walking in and she looked at me. She's like, oh, were you a little scared? And I was like, just a little bit. And she's like, okay, let's go back now. And I was like, okay, let's go. And then she just led me back. And I just like went back and I just like sat down on the ground like I'd missed everybody there. And I was like, okay, traumatized. Anyways, it's a nice experience to remember how to call on anxiety. So, does anybody have any comments or questions or reflections?
Yes, Madhupana-Lila Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
What a nice class, thank you. I have a reflection. When you were just talking about calling out like mom, mom, calling out in anxiety when we're chanting, it's interesting, it connects to your point about, or this point we've been discussing that you were discussing about consciousness and how we don't know someone's consciousness based on their external activities that we're looking at. So this whole idea of calling out in the mood of helplessness, it doesn't actually necessarily look a certain way. Like you might not look like you're, I mean, everyone has a different tone of voice, a different like pitch, a different like way that they are chanting or leading kirtan or chanting their japa, where the sound would be different. It might not sound like crying. It might sound more mellow. It might sound more variegated. So I think that's also interesting. You don't know actually externally that doesn't have like a specific external look, that activity of that mood of that consciousness.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, it's not necessarily like someone who's crying and their japa is advanced or like highly advanced, or someone who's chanting very softly. So yeah, that's a very nice point. You can't tell what people's internal mood is based on the way they're chanting Hare Krishna. Thank you for sharing. Anything else? Go, Galila. Let's repeat for example. Gokula Prabhu was saying that Jayapataka was something they were chanting, and one devotee walked up to him and said, Raj, you're sleeping. And straight away he said, No, I'm not. Um, so yeah, the internal mood. It was very nice. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, first, thank you for that great knowledge, very relatable. Um, how do we save ourselves from like, oh,
Sorry, just for Zoom. Those are lights.
yeah, so I was just saying, thank you for the class. How do we save ourselves from complacency? So, in this example of Ajamil, you know, uh, somebody in a particular mode could take away if Krishna will recognize my good qualities at the end of the day. Okay, I'll fall down for a while and still get to come back, and all will be well. So how do we, I guess, stay out of that mood? I love the analogy of the bank account, and we get to make these in the spirit of Krishna consciousness and service. And hearing and chanting, we get to make these deposits into this bank account. Um, but yeah, is there a time that we can actually withdraw too much by this fall down?
Thanks for your question. Um, Basically, we don't, on this point of you're saying how to not become complacent, is they're like, oh, I'll just, I've made some deposits, so at the end of my life, I'll just think of Krishna. It's, I've heard it said before that, yeah, when we're um, leaving our body, it's a very traumatic experience. It could be, most of the time, it's very traumatic. So we want to be able to just think of Krishna quickly. And the only way we can think of Krishna quickly is if we've been practicing it for a long time, just like anything we do. To become good at something, you have to be able to just like do it over and over and over again. And then in our mind, it just becomes automatic like this. Like for me, when I'm cooking, I've made some recipes so many times. And I'm like, yeah, cumin powder, like put it in my hand. I'm like, yeah, that's the right amount. Put it in. I don't have to think about it. It's just automatic. Um, but for thinking about Krishna at the end of our life, we have to be practicing it for a long time. And we don't want to take the chance that, you know, we can pull an Ajmil or that Krishna will just be like, all right, like, I'll just help you out here and save us in that way. Like as soon as Devi Swami gives the example of an honorary degree, that they happen. It's like you go to university and the university just recognizes you like, yeah, you know what, we want to give you an honorary degree. And they just boom right away and you get it. You don't have to do anything. So that happens, but it doesn't happen to everybody. It's very rare. So we don't want to hold out hope that that might happen to us. Instead, better to, yeah, try and develop the qualities and put in the time and effort into chanting Hare Krishna so that, um, yeah, so that at the end of life we can have the best chance of remembering Krishna. And yeah, it's also like thinking when I think Krishna Lokamataji said this to me once, that in a Bhagavatam class, that when we're leaving our body, it's not necessarily that we're going to be in a giant kirtan in front of the deities and that everyone's going to be chanting Hare Krishna and it'll be like easy for us to remember. We might be with like, we might actually be with the person who takes it like, is a trigger for us the most. And it might be hard for us to think of Krishna in that situation. Or maybe we'll be by ourselves and it'll just be up to us. So in this way, it's actually good to think like, okay, I need to practice this skill. I need to try and chant as much as possible with as much attention as possible so that when this moment comes, I've got something that I can kind of rely on. Not that this is completely like in the dark. And I've definitely noticed for myself recently too that whatever we put into the mind, it kind of hangs out there for a little bit before it comes out. Uh, so like if you go on social media a lot, like for myself, I get really easily distracted, which I'm really trying to work on. But yeah, whatever, if I see something like this hair commercial, I saw it like yesterday, but it's just like circulating in my mind, like Sephora hair products. Not that I even would ever go and use that sort of stuff, but it's there. So these sorts of things will also come up. So the more Krishna we put in, then it kind of overpowers everything else. Do you guys have anything you want to add, or any comments, or any questions? Mataji, any reflections?
Boys, and just to say some things that just really brought some realization to talking about eating it out. And I said, okay, it's actually a mercy, Krishna, that things don't satisfy us fully, and we have that understanding. Because if not, we would just be that needed. We'd be like, yeah, I'll just keep this way. My life would be wonderful. And there's a song, you guys are both such too. But there's a song that I used to listen to a long time. And one of the verses was about if the world was perfect. And he said that, they'd be just machines to make big decisions, programmed by fellows with compassion and vision. It will be clear when their work is done, they'll be eternally free and eternally known. And I thought if people are eternally free and young and eternally insane, without Christian, and so it's like we always are listening at what we think is going to be perfect. And then when you talk about calling for mom, what I thought was that also in that, when a child cries out like that, there's an assurance that mom's going to show up.
Yeah.
And there's a comfort that she'll be there and she'll make it all okay. She'll fix this, she'll, whatever.
Yeah.
And that in that crimes in that way, that's what we should see. So assurance. And coming back here is a long time. I remember I was just so pissed. I was even driving up, through mountains. I was thinking, oh, I'm gonna see if the boys hadn't been there. So like, damn, since she was just like things like that. Some wonderful things. And that when I'm chanting japa, I should confidently that I am going to be in the presence of my dearest friend, who I haven't seen since like last time I was chanting japa. And this is the best thing ever. I come with that kind of joy in my heart because Krishna's there waiting every time. Happy to be here. So thank you so much for your comments.
Gosh, thank you so much. That was so nice. Okay, we'll end there. Conjunction Bhagavatam Ki.
Madhupana-Lila, what's a little bit of what Mataji said?
Pure nectar, pure nectar. Um,
Definitely.
you have to be in the temple to hear it. No, she was just highlighting the points of when you're chanting japa, it's like you're getting the opportunity to meet your dearest friends that you haven't met since the last time you chanted japa, and it's just like that connection is um yeah, it's connection is so strong. Like this is a friend that you've been looking waiting for, which is always gonna be like that's true. So remembering that point, like you're calling out for mom, it's like mom's always gonna be there to help. She's always gonna fix your problem. That same nice, sweet note is there with Krishna. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, talking to the altars are open real soon because they're not talking. Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Is there any time left for comments? I just want to say quickly that with regards to this problem of becoming complacent and contemplating sense gratification with the idea that I'll pick up again later. Um, when you resolve to do something like that, you are committing an offense. There are actually three different offenses. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master, to commit sinful activities on the strength of the holy name, and maintaining material attachments. You have to understand some of the instructions on this matter. When you commit such offenses, you spoke of the spiritual bank account. That account is never lost. But when you commit offenses, you can destroy all of your previous advancement in Krishna consciousness. So, very, very serious thing. You don't want to go backwards, and by committing offenses, particularly you commit offenses to the spiritual master, any offenses to the holy name, offenses to Vaishnavas, these sorts of um, activities have the potential to completely destroy all of your previous advancement. Um, your spiritual bank account can be wiped out. So we should never think in that sort of way. Thank you for a very nice class. I actually have a whole bunch of comments, but there's no time. Uh, Lots of wonderful points made. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you I totally forgot about that point. So thank you for bringing that up. That's slipped my mind. Okay, that's very, very important to make sure that's the to the devotee who asked the question. Thank you for participating online. The altar is a little late. That should be at least.
Jaya Radha Radha